role. So this piece with finance has a lot of different approaches. Again, just going to round back to showcase how this workbench really works in real time. When it comes to finance as a domain, our typical use case for AI is to help us do not just deep research, but also create profiles. So the way that I've kind of done it is I went ahead and I asked it that I want to create these paywall-free business and financials profile if I have access to things. What that requires is me to then know which direct registries, or at least official registries, I can depend on. Some may not be privy to that. So for yourself, for watching this, I'm going to go ahead and share that in the resources here. And then from that, you can also extrapolate from this. Apply your own methods. Honestly, I think a very hyper-personalized one to your industry is the best way to pull off a diagnostic. But if you're more so interested in just trying it for trying's sake, like I mentioned, I do have a program that'll help kind of walk through how to better understand the trifecta between an service offering rather, your ideal customer base, and then actually bringing that to market through a go-to-market strategy. That all being said, let's give this a shot. So I wanted to essentially create a business and financials profile. The company that I'm going to go for this case is, let's go with browser use, recently funded. All right, so let's see what that kind of looks like. I'm gonna go ahead, let it run, kind of pull some deep research. It's gonna go ahead, actually extrapolate what the best approach is to doing that. Keep you conscious of the credits. I might just fast track through some of it, but there you go. So maps out what you got to do in the browser, or what it's going to do rather. Navigating through all these good old registries and extrapolating. Seems like a good amount of steps. So we're gonna go ahead, let it run, and just see what it does. So you see, to kind of cut it short, I went ahead and said, okay, cool, go dig for press releases. Because browser use is, a recently funded company. It's not IPO'd, right? But if you had a company that was bigger, they were researching, this would work just the same. I wanted to take it down the personalization waterfall of press releases and try to understand what's going on there. And I made sure to restrict it to just a few articles. So here, you'll see it in action. So as you can see here, it went ahead and produced a full-blown research report, citations and everything, also mapping out everything I need to know. From there, good old success. Didn't click through the usage credits as much, which is great. It's really like browser researching is the backbone for a lot of how this stuff works. So anytime you're doing that in any capacity, you're really playing towards its strengths. The next section here will be exploring some unexplored territory as of the marketplace. So this will be really exciting. Typically, the features I'm about to share with you, they have been behind a paywall. And now this is still sort of a paywall, but it's encompassing with everything else that we're doing. So stay tuned. Super excited for this. If I were you, I'd pay attention. So it goes without saying, the capabilities are now much more expansive than they have been before. So when it comes to traditional forecasting, that typically involved composing some sort of historical data some sort of statistical approach. Now leaning on sort of these algorithmic machine learning models, they're able to run some sort of summarization, any sort of actual capacity handling with the information, and pull patterns, pull information from that you can actually use. One of the advantages of that is you have a bit of accuracy that normally would fall to human error before. There's increased accuracy because it sticks to the frameworks that it needs, right? So the adaptability to also pull in whatever frameworks, whatever patterns you have and provide it, it sticks to that versus veering off into imagination. That helps us, especially as we digest and pull apart larger pieces of information. This isn't anything new, right? That's been the case, especially for the last decade and some change. Having these additional layers speeds it up because now you have data pre-processing, data cleaning, training, especially on how to do that, that exists already and is freely available. And that allows us to then take this new sort of, call it a tank equivalent, and actually pull what we need in terms of time series, regression-based models, where we're actually able to see, what relationships are actually connected and linear versus approximal and estimated, right? So being able to ground what we're looking at in much more concrete networks, and see their actual relevance, right? See what's prominent, see what's connected. You'll notice that for this one, rather than showcasing you a demo, because I think it's much more valuable to understand your goals and objectives, your direction is more important, especially as we look towards how can we forecast in a way that's more utilitarian based. And from that, actually speeding up time within your process. So let's dive into that. So for this one, we're going to use an existing piece of intelligence, which is famously known as a transcript. With a transcript, you're able to do a lot, right? So there's a number of AI tools that exist, Cluely, Fathom, Otter, et cetera, that allow you to basically take a meeting and extract summary notes from it. Really great if you're doing high volume. So I have a transcript that I'm feeding into here, and I'm going to run it with another run card rather, as you've seen in the previous videos with this agentic browser. I'm going to go ahead and slap it at the top, and I'm going to have it create a decision brief with leadership, management, and implementation routing, as well as something called an Eisenhower matrix. So I'm going to dive into what that's all about, just kind of showing you how these frameworks really come to exist. So the transcript was with Brain-Based Kafka, so it was a discovery one, non-sensitive client information, which is great. Take you guys through it. So fed in the transcript, threw in a run card, which will be shared in the resources, and I'm basically going to have it extract that content and then produce a Eisenhower matrix to explain what that's all about. So while it's basically getting ready for that, I'm going to go ahead and pretty much explain what that's all about. So first you'll see the browser agent. Let me just make sure you guys can see what's happening here. So it's going ahead, handling that file storage externally, right? Having its own storage management tunnel, if you can imagine that, as well as the actual browser agent that will navigate work. First is deploying the file agent, right? And then extracting from there pretty much what it needs. So there we go. I could have attached it as a text file and probably would have saved it a lot of trouble. But I went ahead, it got what it needed, was able to extract what I wanted, and provided a full breakdown. So looking at this, interesting. Okay, it struggled to access. Good learning point. So let's fix that. I'm going to go ahead and going to add in a file. So I'm going to go ahead, create a new text document. Go ahead, test on this. Nothing too fancy. Again, you can save this in any capacity. I'm going to go ahead and copy the transcript, paste it in. So went ahead, added in the transcript as a file. Going to go ahead and hit enter on it, send it forward, and allow it to do what it needs to do. So there we go. I'm pretty much allowing it to get what it needs. And you'll see kind of the Heisenhower work in real time. That way I can actually walk you guys through really the framework, I would say, in terms of anchoring this and making sense of it. I was going to go ahead and use the file agent to do that, and then the code agent will go ahead and actually scan it to create an actual brief, running logic behind it, of course. So I'm just going to go ahead and let that run. So you'll notice I requested a markdown format. Reason being, it's the most compatible with like Notion, Obsidian, GPT, whatever else I'm using. It's just the simplest thing to move from language model to language model. And if you're working with AI in any capacity, you probably have seen this kind of format. It's pretty clean. So from here, you can see it trying to classify, basically pull information into its different layers. So seeing what's a leadership decision, right, in terms of partnership, what's a management decision in terms of process, what's an implementation decision in terms of actual, what's going inside of the thing. And then the Eisenhower matrix gauges urgency, figure out what isn't urgent but needs to be scheduled, what needs to be delegated, and then what needs to be eliminated. That helps you basically really get concise and focused on what we're trying to do. I think that's one of the key pieces. So as this continues to run, you'll be able to see a full production version of it. It's continuing to run the rice analysis as well. More layers. And again, you probably won't need to do this for most. I'll say most, but it depends on the meeting, right? It depends what you're trying to do. In terms of a comprehensive process, like that's hard to say. It's a matter of like what frameworks do you actually want to integrate in towards what you're doing. That may not be all of this, which is okay. So let's take a look. See what we got here. Interesting. Broken down to the do first, justification and impact wise. Right? Pretty much positioning Kafka as a full-blown partnership, which is really exciting. Fingers crossed we can cross that bridge. And also seeing, in terms of the rice analysis, where does it score in terms of a pilot program, a vendor evaluation framework, right? So what needs to be done? How do we expand these services across the portfolio? And how can we actually make use of it? So there's another example. Again, just by running a simple transcript analysis with as many frameworks as you like. You can do this with as many language models as you like. This one you can kind of just set and run and trust that it will actually incorporate everything it needs to. And that's kind of the key advantages here.